You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Now, Trevor, let's talk about the Ashes and its connection to the Adelaide Oval. Seeing that the Ashes are on later this year in England, we might as well talk about the Ashes because the Adelaide Oval has a strong connection with Ashes cricket over the years. It's witnessed many great moments in Ashes cricket that have happened in its history. And the Ashes is full of history. It stretches over for 141 years since 1882. And as you mentioned earlier, Trevor, the first test match that was played at Adelaide Oval was Australia-England. And that was in 1884, and that was the first official test, as we mentioned earlier. England won by 8 wickets. Australia were bowled out for 243 and 191. England 369 all out and were chasing 66 to win, and they did it with ease, finishing on 2 for 67. And England went on to win the 1884-85 Ashes series in Australia, 3-2 in the best of 5. And that was a couple of years after that test match at the Oval in 1882, where it gave birth to the Ashes legend. Which Australia won that test match by 7 runs in 1882. And Fred the Spoff Demon took 14 wickets for the match. He got 7 in both innings. And Australia won by 7 runs. It was a close game in the end. So, Trevor, tell us the history of the Ashes with Adelaide Oval. What's its connection over the years?
Okay, well, as I said, the first test, 1884. Since then, there's been 81 tests at Adelaide Oval, and 33 of those have been Ashes tests. So nearly half the tests at Adelaide Oval have been Ashes tests. Australia have done pretty well at Adelaide Oval. I think of the 33 games, we've won 19, lost 9 and drawn 5, I think. That golden period of Giffen and Darling and Hill and Ernie Jones was a great period for Ashes cricket. I think we won 5 straight games of Ashes cricket at Adelaide Oval in those days, and that hasn't been surpassed since. We've never managed to string together 5 in a row since then. But it's certainly a big event on Adelaide's sporting calendar, an Ashes Test, and it holds the record for the biggest attendances at Adelaide Oval. The recent Ashes series, we just managed to pip the attendance records from the Bodyline series. So, the record stood from the 1930s up until a few years ago. So Adelaide still loves its Ashes tests, and it's seen as it is the spiritual home of the Barmy Army. It's where they actually first had their T-shirts printed. So, there's the English supporters really have a connection with Adelaide Oval and Ashes cricket as well.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, so many great moments and test matches over the years. And let's talk about some of those great Ashes moments at Adelaide Oval over the years, because there's so many. To name a few, the Bodyline test, of course, 1932-33. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Okay.
Because that's quite an interesting subject to talk about. And Adelaide Oval was in the centre of the tensions rising. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Dennis Lillee in 1970-71 made his test debut at Adelaide Oval against England. He took 5 for 84 on debut. So he's on the honours board on debut at Adelaide Oval in test matches. Mark Waugh's test century on debut in 1990-91, scoring 138 in that test match. Amazing Adelaide, 2006-07. Who can remember that? Shane Warne bowling Australia to victory, and Michael Hussey hitting the winning runs through cover for Australia to win that amazing test match. Mitchell Johnson taking 7 for 40 in 2013-14. Arguably one of the best spells of bowling I've ever seen in my time of watching the game. And that was a very good performance from him. And South Australia's own test player, Greg Blewett, scoring a test century on debut in the 1994-95 Ashes series. He scored that century and debuted with fellow South Australian teammate at the time, Peter McIntyre, who played in the same test as well. So that was good for South Australia, seeing a couple of South Australians making their Test debuts in an Ashes Test, and for Greg Blewett becoming one of many to score a Test century on debut for Australia. And an Ashes one is quite special. So many moments in Ashes Tests over the years at Adelaide Oval, and we'll be here all day talking about it, Trevor. There's just so many over the years. So, Trevor, in your opinion,
we can slot in one more debut at Adelaide Oval. It's going back a bit, but Albert Trott in 1895 took, was it 8 for 43, and he made 38 and 72, both not out at Adelaide Oval. That 8 for 43 is still the best debut bowling in any Test match anywhere. So that's another one for on the honour board at Adelaide Oval.
Absolutely. So in your opinion, Trevor, what do you consider to be the greatest Ashes moment at Adelaide Oval? You had to choose of your time of watching cricket. What's your best moment in Ashes cricket at the Adelaide Oval?
Oh, I was going to say the greatest Ashes Test at Adelaide Oval would have to have been the bodyline test, but I didn't watch that one. I guess it's difficult. There's that many events that have happened at Adelaide Oval, and you've mentioned a few of them that come to mind. That it's really difficult to pick out one and leave out all the others. So I'm not really. I find it difficult to come up with one moment. Yes, I saw Lily, Blewett, and those innings, but I have extreme difficulty picking out one. It just all goes together as part of the fabric of cricket at Adelaide Oval.
Yes, it's like picking your favourite child. It's
something like that. Yes.
Yeah, but if I had to choose one, probably Amazing Adelaide, 2006-07, hands down, probably the best moment I saw. Shane Warne, the late Shane Warne, of course, bowling non-stop from the cathedral end at the Adelaide Oval, the scoreboard end, for those who don't know. Bowled for 2 sessions and a bit straight from that end, and bowled Australia to victory, really, and Australia were chasing 160 odd to win and won on the final session in the closing moments. So that's probably have to be the best for me personally. But as you said, there's so many moments, it's very hard to choose. They all are worthy of being the best at Adelaide Oval, but there's so many to choose from in Ashes cricket and in Test cricket as well. Trevor, let's talk about the infamous third Test match of the Bodyline series in 1932-33. One of the most difficult periods in Ashes cricket history, in particular the third Test at the Adelaide Oval, where there was a potential riot. Riot police were called. The crowd were displeased when Australian captain at the time, Bill Woodford, got struck over the heart while batting, and Australian wicketkeeper Bert Oldfield was struck on the head while batting. The riot never eventuated, thank goodness, and England won the Test by a whopping 338 runs, and they won the series 4-1 in the best of 5. So, Trevor, tell us about that Test match and why there were concerns of a potential riot that was going to happen at Adelaide Oval that day.
Well, the two sides came to Adelaide 1-1 in the series, so it was a crucial test in the series. And unfortunately, the Adelaide crowd didn't really take to the English captain, Douglas Jardine, very well at all. And he thrived in that environment. He did all that he could to annoy Australians. They used to have the practice wickets at the northern end of the ground, and thousands used to go and watch them practice. And when the English were practicing, one of their bowlers happened to bowl Jardine out. The 4,000 people that were there all cheered. So he went to Sacca and got the ground cleared. He didn't like that very much. So there was a fair bit of animosity there to start with. And then, of course, the incident where the two players got hit during the match. Firstly, Bill Woodfull and then Bert Oldfield. Bill Woodfull and Bert Oldfield. Neither of those were actually using a bodyline field. They were just short pitch balls at the time that happened to be very good balls that struck the two of them. Well, Woodville got struck. Bert Oldfield actually tried to hit the ball out of the ground, I think, and it caught the top edge and ricocheted onto his head and fractured his skull. But what I think really upset the crowd with the Bill Woodville one was after he was struck, Jardine called out to his bowler in a voice that everyone around the ground heard, "Well bowled, Harold." And of course, Bill Woodville was something of a hero in Australia, so that didn't go down well with the crowd, and that's where the tensions rose. The extra police were called, and it looked as if it could get really nasty. And in fact, I think Wisden has labelled the bodyline test as the nastiest test ever played. Was one of the quotes that they used for it. And at night, one of our ground staff at the Adelaide Oval was actually stationed out on the pitch with a shotgun or a rifle, had to guard the pitch because they were really worried that someone would get that upset with the way the play was going. They'd try and disrupt the match by going out and damaging the pitch. So that the gun that was used is actually on display in the bodyline bar at Adelaide Oval. Where the groundsman did that. But yeah, so it was the tensions really rose. To give an idea of what the tension was like. Evidently, Harold Larwood, while he was in Adelaide, went to the movies one night here, and he sat down in the movies, and behind him sat a woman and her young son, and he heard the woman say to her young son, "Oh, that's Harold Larwood, English fast bowler, sitting in front of you." And the lad turned to his mum and said, "But mummy, he doesn't look like a murderer." So that's the sort of tensions that were going on, and Jardine did very little to calm them down. If anything, he fueled them because, he was there to win a test match and curtail Bradman's brilliance, and he would do anything he could. The match itself was significant for a couple of other things. It actually caused Bradman to change his batting style. After failing in the first innings, in the second innings, before he went out, he said he was going out to hit them before they hit him. And he played what we describe as a T20 innings. These days, he scored 66 off about 73 balls in 71 minutes. He hit one of the only 2 sixes he hit in Australia in his career. He only hit 6 in his career. 4 of them were in England. The other 2 were on Adelaide Oval. And during that match, he also took a wicket. Now, he's not known for his bowling as a leg spinner, but he took 2 wickets in his test career, and one was in the final over of a day during the bodyline test on what was described as the worst ball bowled in the day. Was a rank full toss to Wally Hammond, who tried to strike it out of the ground and clean bowled him. So there's a couple of sort of historical links in terms of Bradman's career to the Adelaide Oval as well, and the bodyline test.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it there with Jardine saying, "Well bowled, Harold." I think Bradman was at the non-strikers end at the time, apparently, and that was meant to unsettle him rather than Bill Woodford. And then obviously the MCC manager, Plum Warner, went into the Australian dressing rooms to see if Mr. Woodford was okay. And I think Bill Woodford reportedly replied, "I don't want to see you, Mr. Warner. There are 2 sides out there. One is trying to play cricket. The other is not."
Yeah,
he later added, "The game is too good to be spoiled. It's time for some people to get out of it." And that was really the first inkling of Bill Woodford not being pleased with Bodyline, because he was quite a very calm, reassured person. He wasn't a person who showed his emotions. He was calm, kind, courteous. But that was the first time that he was unhappy about proceedings, especially when he got hit on that day in Adelaide.
Well, and Bert Oldfield, when he got struck, of course, with a fractured skull, he had to miss the next test, but he played in the 5th test, and that 4th test that he missed was the only match he missed during his test career. So I guess it's all right to miss one if you've got a fractured skull.
Yes, he was in a bad way
Yes.
After that, and he, as you mentioned, had a fractured skull and had to miss the next test, which was in Brisbane at the Gabba. which England won by 6 wickets. And the only test that Australia won was the second test, and that was in Melbourne, where they won by 11 runs. And as you said, the series was 1-1 heading into Adelaide, and then England won by 338 runs and nearly a potential riot that eventuated at Adelaide Oval. But thank goodness it didn't happen. But it's one of those talking points, isn't it,
Yes.
that often people talk about with Bodyline. And that's where it really got fired up. And obviously Bradman, had an effect on him. 396 runs in the series, average of 56. 1 century, which came in Melbourne in the second test. He didn't play the first test. He was ill in Sydney. So he came back for the second test in Melbourne. He batted for 185 minutes and got out for a golden duck in the first innings by Bill Bowes, England bowler, got bowled. And then in the second innings, he got 103 not out. So he managed to score a century against that type of bowling and facing Larwood and all that. But understandable from Jardine to do that, because in 1930 he had a very wonderful series, 974 runs and an average of 139. So it's a big difference between 1930 and 1932-33. So
if his name was
Jardine
if his name wasn't Bradman, a 56 average in a test series wouldn't be too bad.
No, it's not. It's pretty good, but Bradman standards, it wasn't. It was quite underwhelming.
Yes.
But, Jardine leapt up from watching the film footage from 1930 at the Oval, and he said, I've got him. He's yellow. In the end, it sort of worked, really. The Australians couldn't cope with Bodyline, and England went on to win the series and get the Ashes back because they lost them in 1930 after they got them back in 1928-29 when Bradman made his debut in that.
Unfortunately, Jardine had the fast bowlers who could do what they needed to do.
Yes, and I think some of the English batters said, if Australia did this to us, no, that wouldn't be nice to do that. But it's an interesting talking point in Ashes cricket history.
Yes,
the Bodyline, and people still talk about it to this day, and especially when referring to Adelaide Oval in that third Test match on that occasion. Hi everyone, hope you enjoyed our historical series episode, looking back at the history of Adelaide Oval with Trevor Manuel, ambassador and tour guide at Adelaide Oval. If you are interested in visiting Adelaide Oval or visiting the Bradman collection, head over to the Adelaide Oval website, which is in the description of this episode.